imagine this. You feel completely fine, healthy, confident even. But there's one question sitting quietly in the back of your mind: is my size enough? And you're not alone. Millions of men silently wonder the same thing, scrolling through misinformation, trying random tips, and risking their health on things that simply don't work. But here's the truth. Science does have answers. Not myths, not internet hacks, but actual medically studied methods that can influence penile size, either temporarily or in specific cases more permanently. So if you've ever been curious, concerned, or just want the truth backed by science, not exaggeration, you need to stay with me till the end, because what you're about to learn might completely change how you think about size, performance, and your body. First, let's clear the biggest misconception. What you think is small is often completely normal. Studies across thousands of men show that average size falls within a relatively narrow range, yet perception is wildly distorted by media and unrealistic comparisons. But before chasing change, understanding baseline reality is critical. Now let's talk about what science actually supports. There are two categories: temporary enhancement and limited evidence-based structural change. Temporary methods, like improving erection quality, can significantly increase perceived size. Why? Because a stronger erection equals fuller expansion. That's not growth, it's optimization of what you already have. This brings us to blood flow. Erections are fundamentally vascular events. Better circulation means better expansion. Regular exercise, cardiovascular health, and nitric oxide boosting habits directly influence erection quality. In simple terms, a healthier heart often equals better performance, and yes, sometimes a visibly larger erection. Then come devices. Probably the most misunderstood area. Traction devices, when used consistently over months, have shown measurable length increases in clinical studies. We're not talking overnight miracles, but gradual changes through tissue adaptation. On the other hand, pumps can create temporary enlargement by drawing blood into the tissue, but those effects don't last long. Now let's address what doesn't work. Pills, oils, and miracle supplements promising inches of growth. There's no solid scientific evidence supporting them. Many are marketing tactics designed to exploit insecurity rather than solve it. Hormones also play a role, but only in specific conditions. If someone has clinically low testosterone, treating that can improve sexual function and overall tissue health. But for most men with normal levels, increasing testosterone won't suddenly increase size. And finally, the most overlooked factor: confidence and performance. Because here's what many don't realize: satisfaction is influenced far more by communication, connection, and performance than raw size alone. That doesn't invalidate the desire for improvement, but it puts it into perspective. In the end, science doesn't promise magic, but it does offer clarity. Focus on what's real. Optimize your health, understand your body, and avoid falling for false promises. Because when you replace myths with facts, you don't just improve physically, you take control mentally too. Imagine this: you're going about your day, everything feels normal, nothing seems wrong yet. There's this quiet thought that keeps coming back: am I actually enough? It's not something most men openly talk about, but it's one of the most common silent concerns worldwide. The truth is, perception around penile size has been heavily distorted by unrealistic standards. Whether it's adult content, locker room exaggerations, or social media myths, these influences create a false baseline, making perfectly normal bodies feel inadequate. Scientifically speaking, when researchers measure large populations, the average erect length falls within a consistent range, and most men actually cluster very close to that average. But perception doesn't follow science, it follows comparison, and comparison is often flawed. What's even more interesting is how the brain interprets size. Studies show that anxiety and self-doubt can amplify perceived inadequacy even when measurements are completely normal. In other words, the issue is often not physical, it's psychological. And that psychological pressure can directly impact performance, creating a cycle where doubt leads to reduced confidence, which then affects erection quality, which then reinforces the original concern. So what feels like a size issue may actually be a performance and perception loop. There's also a concept called visual bias. When you look down at your own body, the angle naturally makes things appear smaller compared to how you see others. It's a built-in optical illusion that most people don't even realize is affecting their judgment. Add to that the fact that many online representations are exaggerated or selectively presented, and it becomes clear why so many men develop inaccurate expectations about what's normal. Another key point is that satisfaction, both personal and in relationships, does not correlate as strongly with size as people assume. Research consistently shows that factors like emotional connection, communication, and overall sexual health play a much larger role. Yet, because size is easier to measure, it becomes the focal point of insecurity. It's simple, visible, and easy to compare, even if it's not the most important factor. And here's where understanding reality becomes powerful. When you replace assumptions with actual data, something shifts. Instead of chasing unrealistic ideals, you begin to see your body through a more accurate lens. That doesn't mean ignoring the desire for improvement. It means approaching it from a place of knowledge rather than insecurity. Because once you understand that normal is far broader than you were led to believe, the urgency to fix something that may not even be broken starts to fade, and in its place comes a more grounded, confident perspective that allows you to focus on what truly matters and what can actually be improved in a meaningful way. When it comes to increasing penile length, one of the most important things to understand is the difference between what is permanent and what is temporary, because this is where most misinformation exists. Many people are led to believe that quick fixes can create lasting change, but science tells a very different story. The penis is not a muscle that you can simply train in the traditional sense. It's a complex structure made up of vascular tissue, smooth muscle, and connective tissue. Because of this, most short-term methods don't actually increase length. They simply enhance how much of your existing size is being used at a given moment. Temporary changes are primarily linked to erection quality. When blood flow improves and the erectile chambers fill more completely, the penis can appear noticeably larger. This is why factors like stress, fatigue, poor sleep, smoking, or cardiovascular health can all influence size from day to day. A weaker erection doesn't mean you've lost size, it means you're not reaching your full potential in that moment. On the flip side, optimizing blood flow through exercise, proper diet, and reduced stress can maximize erection quality, giving a fuller and sometimes longer appearance. But once the erection subsides, those changes disappear, which is why they are classified as temporary. Now, when we talk about permanent or semi-permanent changes, the conversation becomes much more specific and limited. Scientifically, the only non-surgical method with some evidence behind it is traction therapy. This involves using a medical-grade device that applies gentle, consistent stretching over long periods of time, often several hours a day for months. The idea is based on a biological principle called tissue remodeling, where cells adapt to sustain mechanical stress. Studies have shown that this can lead to modest increases in length over time. But the key word here is modest. We're not talking about dramatic transformations, and it requires patience, consistency, and proper use to avoid injury. Surgical options also exist, but they come with significant risks and are typically reserved for specific medical conditions rather than cosmetic enhancement. Even then, outcomes can vary, and complications such as scarring eye functional issues can occur. This is why most medical professionals emphasize caution when considering invasive procedures. What's important here is clarity, understanding that the body has biological limits. There is no scientifically proven pill, supplement, or cream that can permanently increase penile length, These products often rely on marketing rather than evidence, targeting insecurity rather than providing real solutions. Recognizing this helps you avoid wasting time, money, and potentially risking your health. So when you separate myth from reality, you start to see a clear pattern. Temporary methods enhance what's already there, while permanent changes require time, consistency, and realistic expectations, and even then, the results are gradual rather than dramatic, which is why understanding the difference between these two categories is essential before deciding what path, if any, is worth pursuing. At its core, an erection is a vascular event, which means it's all about blood flow, not just anatomy. The penis contains specialized sponge-like tissue that fills with blood during arousal, and the more efficiently that process happens, the firmer and often larger the erection appears. This is why two men with the exact same anatomical size can look very different in terms of erection quality, because one may have optimal blood flow while the other does not. So when people talk about increasing size, what they're often really experiencing is improved expansion due to better circulation. The key player here is something called nitric oxide, a molecule your body naturally produces that helps blood vessels relax and widen. When nitric oxide levels are sufficient, blood can flow more easily into the penile tissue, allowing it to fully expand. But if blood vessels are stiff, narrowed, or unhealthy due to factors like smoking, poor diet, lack of exercise, or C, chronic stress, then that expansion is limited. In simple terms, your erection is only as good as your vascular system allows it to be. That means your heart health, blood pressure, and overall circulation directly impact not just performance, but also perceived size. This is where lifestyle becomes incredibly powerful. Regular physical activity, especially cardiovascular exercise, improves blood vessel function and increases nitric oxide availability. Even something as simple as consistent walking, running, or strength training can enhance circulation over time. Nutrition also plays a role. Foods rich in antioxidants and natural nitrates like leafy greens, beets, and fruits support vascular health. On the other hand, processed foods, excessive sugar, and trans fats can damage blood vessels and reduce their ability to expand properly. Sleep is another often overlooked factor. Poor sleep affects hormone balance, including testosterone, and increases stress hormones like cortisol, both of which can negatively impact erection quality. And then there's mental health, because stress and anxiety can trigger the body's fight or flight response, which constricts blood vessels and makes it harder to achieve a full erection. So even if everything is physically normal, psychological factors alone can reduce blood flow enough to affect size and performance. What's important to understand is that improving blood flow doesn't create new tissue. It allows your existing tissue to perform at its best. That's why some men notice a visible difference when they improve their lifestyle. They haven't increased their anatomical length, but they've unlocked their maximum potential. It's like inflating a balloon fully versus only halfway. The size of the balloon hasn't changed, but how much it expands has. There are also medical conditions like erectile dysfunction, where blood flow is significantly impaired. In those cases, treatments that improve circulation can restore function and, in doing so, restore the appearance of full size. But even outside of medical conditions, small improvements in vascular health can make a noticeable difference over time. So instead of chasing unrealistic promises, focusing on blood flow gives you something real, controllable, and scientifically grounded, because when circulation improves, function improves, and when function improves, what you see physically often improves alongside it in a way that is natural, sustainable, and directly connected to your overall health rather than temporary tricks or false claims. When it comes to devices and techniques, this is where things get especially confusing, because the internet is full of bold claims, dramatic before and after pictures, and promises that sound almost too good to be true. And most of the time they are. But if you strip away the marketing and look strictly at scientific evidence, there are only a few methods that show any real measurable effect, and even those come with limitations that people often don't talk about. Let's start with traction devices, which are one of the few non-surgical options that have some clinical backing. These devices work by applying gentle, consistent stretching to the penile tissue over long periods, often several hours a day for multiple months. The idea is based on a biological process where tissues adapt to sustained tension, gradually remodeling and extending over time. Some studies have shown small but measurable increases in length with consistent use. However, the key here is discipline and patience. This isn't something that works in days or even weeks, and improper use can lead to discomfort or injury. So while traction devices can work to a limited extent, they are far from the quick fix many people expect. Now compare hat to vacuum pumps, which are much more commonly known. These devices create negative pressure, pulling blood into the penis and causing it to expand. The result can look impressive in the moment, fuller, sometimes slightly larger, but this effect is temporary. Once the pressure is released and the blood flow returns to normal, the size goes back to baseline. Pumps are often used medically to help with erectile dysfunction, and they can be useful in that context, but they don't create permanent length gains. What they do is enhance blood flow temporarily, which can improve erection quality in the short term. Then there are manual techniques, often referred to online with different names and routines. The problem is that there's very little high-quality scientific evidence supporting these methods. While some are based loosely on the same principle as traction, applying stress to tissue, the lack of standardization, guidance, and safety data makes them risky. Overdoing these techniques can lead to bruising, pain, or even long-term damage, which defeats the entire purpose. And then we have the biggest category of all: scams, pills, oils, herbal supplements, and miracle enlargement products flood the market, all claiming permanent results with minimal effort. But scientifically, there is no solid evidence that any of these can increase penile length. Many of them rely on placebo effects, temporary blood flow changes, or purely psychological reassurance. In some cases, they can even be harmful especially if they contain unregulated ingredient. What's important here is learning to separate realistic expectations from marketing hype. Real methods require time, consistency, and come with modest results. Unrealistic methods promise fast, dramatic changes with little effort, and those are the ones that should immediately raise red flags. Because when something claims to bypass biology entirely, it's usually not innovation. It's illusion designed to take advantage of insecurity rather than provide a genuine solution, which is why understanding the difference between evidence-based techniques and empty promises is one of the most important steps in making safe, informed decisions. When people think about increasing size, they often overlook one of the most foundational aspects of the body: hormones and lifestyle. These aren't flashy, they don't promise instant results, and they're not marketed as aggressively. But scientifically, they play a major role in sexual health, function, and overall tissue quality. The key hormone here is testosterone, which influences libido, energy levels, and erectile function. However, there's a common misunderstanding that simply increasing testosterone will directly increase penile length. In reality, for adult men with normal hormone levels, boosting testosterone does not lead to structural growth. What it does do is improve function, stronger erections, better performance, and increased responsiveness, which can enhance perceived size. Now, in cases where someone has clinically low testosterone, the story is different. Low levels can lead to weaker erections, reduced blood flow efficiency, and decreased tissue responsiveness. In such situations, medical treatment to restore normal hormone levels can significantly improve sexual function. But again, this is about restoring what's already there, not creating new length. It's optimization, not transformation. Lifestyle factors are where things get even more interesting because they influence multiple systems at once. For example, body fat percentage plays a surprisingly important role. Excess fat, especially around the lower abdomen, can partially bury the visible base of the penis, making it appear shorter than it actually is. By reducing body fat through proper diet and exercise, more of the shaft becomes externally visible. This doesn't change the internal structure, but visually it can make a noticeable difference. Exercise itself has a powerful effect beyond just fat loss. Strength training and cardiovascular activity improve blood circulation, hormone balance, and endothelial function, the health of your blood vessels. Better circulation means better erections, and better erections mean fuller expansion. At the same time, regular exercise helps regulate insulin levels and reduce inflammation, both of which are linked to vascular health and sexual performance. Nutrition also plays a critical role. Diets rich in whole foods, vegetables, fruits, healthy fats, and lean proteins support hormone production and vascular function. Certain nutrients like zinc, vitamin D, and omega-3 fatty acids are particularly important for maintaining healthy testosterone levels and blood flow. On the other hand, highly processed foods, excessive sugar, and alcohol can disrupt hormone balance and damage blood vessels over time. Sleep is another pillar that many underestimate. Poor sleep reduces testosterone production and increases stress hormones, which can negatively affect both libido and erection quality. Even a few nights of inadequate sleep can have a measurable impact on hormonal balance. Over time, chronic sleep deprivation compounds these effects, making it harder for the body to function optimally. And then there's stress, one of the most silent but powerful disruptors. Chronic stress elevates cortisol, which interferes with testosterone production and constricts blood vessels, limiting blood flow. This creates a situation where both hormonal and vascular systems are working against you. When you put all of this together, it becomes clear that natural optimization isn't about changing your anatomy. It's about allowing your body to perform at its highest potential. And when hormones are balanced, lifestyle is aligned, and your body is functioning efficiently, what you gain is not just better performance, but a more confident, consistent, and naturally optimized version of yourself that reflects the true capability of your physiology rather than an artificial or temporary enhancement. By the time we reach this point, it becomes clear that the conversation about size is not just physical, it's deeply psychological, emotional, and even social. Because while biology sets certain limits, the way you experience your body, your confidence, and your performance is shaped by far more than just measurements. In fact, one of the most consistent findings in sexual health research is that satisfaction is rarely determined by size alone, yet despite that, the pressure to measure up often literally remains incredibly strong. Confidence plays a central role here, and not in a vague motivational sense, but in a very real physiological way. When you feel confident, your body responds differently. Stress levels drop, blood flow improves, and you're more present in the moment. On the other hand, when you're anxious or self-conscious, your body shifts into a stress response. That means increased cortisol, tighter blood vessels, and reduced erection quality. The very worry about not being enough can directly interfere with your ability to perform at your best, creating a cycle where doubt feeds the outcome you're trying to avoid. Performance is also about awareness and connection, not just physical attributes. Performance is also about awareness and connection, not just physical attributes. Understanding your partner, communication, timing, and responsiveness all contribute significantly to overall satisfaction. These are skills, learnable, improvable, and often far more impactful than any physical change. But because they're less visible and harder to quantify, they're often overlooked in favor of something easier to focus on, like size. There's also the concept of expectation versus reality. Many people overestimate what is considered ideal and underestimate what actually matters in real life intimacy. This mismatch creates unnecessary pressure. When expectations are unrealistic, even normal becomes not enough. But when expectations are grounded in reality, something shifts. You begin to recognize that you may already be within a completely healthy and functional range. Another important factor is consistency. It's not about a single moment or a single measurement. It's about how reliably your body performs over time. Someone with average size but strong, consistent performance and confidence will often have a far better overall experience than someone who is constantly anxious, regardless of their measurements. That consistency comes from overall health, mental clarity, and a balanced lifestyle. All the things we've been building toward throughout this discussion. And this is where perspective becomes powerful. Wanting improvement is completely valid, but it should come from a place of understanding, not insecurity. Because when insecurity drives the process, it often leads to chasing unrealistic solutions, falling for false promises, and overlooking what actually makes a meaningful difference. But when understanding leads, your focus shifts, you invest in your health, your mindset, and your performance. In the end, size may be the question that starts the journey, but it's rarely the answer that defines it, because what truly shapes confidence and satisfaction is not just what you have physically, but how well your body functions, how clearly you understand it, and how effectively you use it in a way that creates a more complete and fulfilling experience overall. So after everything we've explored, one thing becomes clear: when it comes to penile length, internet is full of noise, but science is very specific. There are no shortcuts, no miracle pills, and no overnight transformations. What actually works is far more grounded. Understanding your body, improving your health, and focusing on what is realistically within your control. Because the truth is, most men are already within a normal range, and what often needs improvement is not size, but function, confidence, and clarity. When blood flow is optimized, when hormones are balanced, when lifestyle supports your body instead of working against it, you begin to see the difference. Not just physically, but mentally. And that shift is powerful. Real evidence-based methods, like improving vascular health or in specific cases using traction devices, require time, patience, and consistency. They don't promise dramatic change, but they do offer something far more valuable: honesty and safety. And in a space filled with misinformation, that matters. At the same time, it's important to recognize that satisfaction and performance are shaped by much more than measurements alone. Confidence, communication, and overall well-being consistently outweigh size when it comes to real-world outcomes. So instead of chasing unrealistic ideals, the smarter approach is to build a body and mindset that perform at their best. Because in the end, this isn't just about size, it's about control over your health, your knowledge, and your decisions. And when you stop chasing myths and start following what science actually supports, you don't just improve one aspect of your life. You elevate your entire sense of confidence and understanding in a way that is real, sustainable, and completely within your reach.